Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Love is Your Medicine podcast. Okay, I'm extremely excited about this episode number 12, because I'm starting a new series with episode 12 that I'll run sometimes. And what this series will be inside my podcast is where I interview people that I know that are putting into practice loving themselves. I see it in action within them, within their lives, and I want to share it with my listening audience. So I decided what I'll name the episodes where I interview people. It'll be called Love's Prescription: Real People, Real Love. Like I said, I'm extremely excited to bring this to you. I will be interviewing my close friend of the family, Cathy. Welcome to the first episode of Love's Prescription: Real People, Real Love. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Love is Your Medicine podcast. And as I said in the intro, this is going to be the first time that I'm going to bring someone on to interview. I'm very excited because I think in episode 1, I kind of mentioned that would be my plan, to bring on different people that I know that not only like the podcast or what I'm saying, but they're living it in different aspects of their life. They came to that realization, like I did, that you have to love yourself to just be a better person overall and to enjoy life. So that is what episode 12 is all about. My first interview. The person I'm bringing on with me, I've known her for a number of years, and we've always been good friends, and she's been a good friend to myself, Michelle, our family. We like her and her son very much, and we've always talked, but I guess we've talked more since I started this podcast, and I realized, like, on our journeys, they're different journeys, but they're very similar. And so that's why I wanted to bring her on, have her interview with me today on episode 12. This is my good friend, Cathy. Hello, Cathy.
Hi, Mitch. Hey.
Thank you again for joining me on episode 12. I can't believe I've done 12 episodes already. And yeah, like I was saying, I want to interview different individuals I know that, kind of feel the same way I do about taking a journey to love yourself, care about yourself, build up your self-worth and your self-love. And so I thought we'd start off by getting to know a little bit about you first. So, Cathy, let's see, where were you born?
So I was born in Chicago, Illinois.
No way.
Yes, yep. I think we talked about that. You're from there too, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna tell my age, because I'm like forgetting something.
No, you're good.
You know what I thought you were gonna say just from talking with you?
What? Florida.
I thought you were gonna say Florida.
I know. I talk about Florida all the time. Like, that's like, but in reality, I've lived in like different places. Florida was just kind of the place where I was like a preteen to a teenager, and to in my early 20s. But yeah, no, Chicago was where I started my life in Chicago.
All right. What part? What side?
I'm not sure. I know like my father lived in like North Ashland Avenue.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Okay.
so so that's where I would go visit him in the summers. I
Yeah.
only lived there like the first couple years of my life. And
Okay.
then I went my mom moved to Puerto Rico. My parents got divorced or separated, and so I lived um like until age 7 in Puerto Rico, and then after
Oh
that I, at age 11, we moved to Florida. But I know I'm always like Florida this, and I love
yeah.
Florida.
I was waiting on you to say like Miami or Tampa, Orlando. You said Chicago.
no,
All
no,
right.
no, Orlando. Orlando's where like I see it as my hometown, but in reality, I've been quite a bit of different places.
Okay. Sounds like me too. So it sounds like maybe north side Chicago. I'm from west side Chicago. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, like you, I was born in Chicago, moved to Houston, lived there for 8 years, and then majority of my life I lived in Atlanta.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that because I knew you were from Georgia, so it's close to Florida. So I'd be like, oh, you're like
Hmm.
so close to like where I grew up, and yeah, we used to go up to Georgia a lot. Like so, I remember those trips. Those were fun, especially the peaches in Georgia are like the
Yeah.
best in the world. Like that was like you cannot get peaches anywhere else like Georgia.
True. And so, let me see. You mentioned a little bit about, excuse me, growing up. Is there anything you feel like kind of formed who you were uh, as you became a teen or an early, like a young adult?
Yes, so many things. Like I was like when I was reading some of your things and hearing some of your podcasts, I was thinking about how sometimes when you're growing up, so many things influence who you are or who you become, and then how you have to work so hard to like unbecome all these things like generational trauma or things that really like kind of held you back from
Mm,
really being your authentic self. And then when you were able to like work on and heal yourself, you were able to like go in a different direction because of the healing you did for yourself. So there were things growing up. I just remember that we moved a lot,
mhm,
and so that really kind of shaped me in the way that I always loved to travel, but I can't really say that I've ever like well here I've lived here the longest, but like I just wasn't very how do you say like deeply rooted in a place.
mhm,
And then also like I grew up with a parent that had a lot of different issues or things. So I was taught like to be a caregiver at very young and to really like bend over backwards for other people and not and I was never supposed to question things. And also growing up like in a Hispanic home, there's a lot of like traditions in which like the older generations or the patriarchs of the family
mhm,
are really supposed to be like the kind of the law, like whatever they say is the right way of thinking or feeling, and so you're not supposed to question that. And I think that really like that really influenced so much of like how as like as a teenager, and then when I got married, I didn't know how to set boundaries or really like have a voice. And so
mhm,
I allowed like things to happen, like mistreatments and not being able to like really stand up for myself because that was something that wasn't really taught. I was just supposed to like follow along or go along with the flow and not really set like these firm boundaries that would have
mhm.
helped if I had just learned them as a young adult or as a teenager.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So that kind of helps me like to understand kind of where you come from, especially about the part about not questioning or going with the flow and being a caregiver. I see
Yes.
how that can affect the person. Yeah.
Yes, and it also for like as when you're growing up, it really is the parents' part to actually like kind of allow you to be yourself. You're not really supposed to be the caregiver. They're supposed to take care of like the children.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in mine, it was so reversed, that I felt that I grew up very fast. I had to really be really responsible very fast. And that was very, it just wasn't very, it wasn't normal. It was very stressed out, very anxious
Mm-hmm.
producing, because you're not able to actually like live your life. It was kind of like you had to cater to someone else and what their needs were, but
Mm-hmm.
you weren't important enough to say like, well, I have needs too. Like I need help, or I need this, or I need
Mm-hmm.
comfort. So yeah, it was a very different upbringing of how I raised my own son. I see how different it was, and yeah, it was different.
Wow. And so um and I would imagine that affected you like in school, coming up, like feeling that way.
Yeah, it was. I just remember like in school there was I did always feel different, but I also realized that it made me to be very protective of other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of and I carried that like throughout my life. It's now like in the recent years that I've had to like really realize that like just to allow like to take care of myself first, and then my son, and like not really I don't know how to be like protective of others, that they could
Mm-hmm.
handle their own. If that makes any sense when
Oh
it
yeah.
comes to like the whole psychology of like not being codependent and things like that. um
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I remember like there were like things that happened while I was like growing up at school that I think now like wow, like I was really pretty like fearless, and I kind of like I like so different from like the way my son reacts to situations. I'm like it was very different. Like I remember, and this is like such an odd like memory, but I remember we were in, I was like middle school, and there was a young um like young girl that was pretty homeless, and you could tell that she was not able to like speak and really like be able to defend herself. And there was like these gangsters like in Orlando. There we had the gangs and things like that. It was different than how it kind of is here. It's a little different here. um and they just were picking on her, and I just was able to like, I don't even know how I did it, but it was like three girls, and I basically was like, leave her alone, and I stood my ground. And I think to this day like I'm still alive, but they did, they just were like, oh, like they, yeah, they left her alone. But and now I'm like how courageous that was, because I don't think as an older person now I'm like don't even like I worry about things like that. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I think that it was just so like instilled in me to like protect and to take care of
Mm-hmm.
other people, that I didn't realize that like sometimes I could have just gotten a teacher like or done something else.
But now let me ask you though, like, were you that quick to stand up for yourself or defend yourself?
I was not. I
Yeah.
was not at all. And that carried on like for many years. Even when I got married, I realized how I try to protect and defend myself. I couldn't. I didn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I stayed in that marriage um, until I had my son, and then there was a lot of things happening in that marriage. But my ex-husband was very traditional, um, but also it kind of leaned more towards like an abusive relationship. And since I grew up in the type of also traditional, but also more toxic and abusive in how it leaned towards, I grew up that you don't really answer back, and you're supposed to like give your all to another person and bend over backwards, and you're not like allowed to have a voice, or and which leads to not having value in yourself, or feel
Yeah.
worthy of yourself, because you're always giving to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that one of the things I thought of is that if I had been raised in a family where they had healthy boundaries, and they had taught me boundaries or standards, or if that I did have a voice, that I could tell someone like this is where like this is how you treat me, and I was able to do that. It would have been a totally different. I would have walked away from that marriage even before it started. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but what I realized is that when my son was born, that's when I started feeling like I need to protect my son instead of also feeling like I needed to protect myself. It was more like I was thinking like I don't want to raise him in this environment, because this is going to be just horrible for both of us, but especially for him. And
Mm-hmm.
but I thought that to myself, but if I had been raised differently, I would have already left that a long time ago, and it would have never even started. so
Mm-hmm.
so it's just
Did,
strange how it is.
did that stress and abuse, did it make you have like low self-esteem?
It did. It did add
Mm-hmm.
to all the other things that the way I grew up. Because sometimes when you're growing up in a household that can be a little bit toxic, there's a lot of like I grew up in a household where insults were not seen as a bad thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Put downs were not seen as a bad thing. I just remember just being told like that I had to be perfect, and and nobody was gonna like care or love me if I wasn't perfect. So I felt like I needed to earn love. And the reality in life is that you don't earn love; you just love people, and they love you back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt like I had to bend over backwards and just um, earn that love, and that was something that I had to really work on after that relationship. And I still think that at times I'm still chipping away at some of that too. Because
Yeah,
it doesn't go away
it's
automatically.
yeah. If things are ingrained in us, it's hard to even when we have a mindset shift. It's hard to stay away from those old habits and
So
thoughts.
true.
And so did you? So I always discuss this with people. You had this low self-esteem, and I'm sure people, they can pick up on that easy. Do you
Yes.
think people use your personality and your self-esteem? Do you think people use it to their advantage?
In the past they have.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think even now, because it seems like that people that are manipulative or have some abusive tendencies, they are it feels like they're always in search of their like next victim.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to spot you from far away.
Oh
The
yeah.
the only the only thing I've noticed is that the more you heal and the more you're like putting yourself first, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're really watching how people are truly, it seems to at first attract them, and then it kind of deflects them. Like they get really they realize that you're not actually what you seem, if that makes any sense. Like you're not
Mm-hmm.
easy to manipulate or easy to abuse anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Because the faith we have, and I always on my episodes when I bring it up, that's how I just refer to it. The faith I have, or that I'm in. It's like
Yeah.
we're taught to love everyone and to be nice, and so I try to be that. But then, like you just said, you have to be careful because some people mistake kindness for weakness, and so yeah, you have to have your boundaries set.
Yes, and that's one of the things I always struggled with, because it's true, like our faith or how we were raised. Sometimes, if we were raised um, religious or with having a strong faith in God, one of the things I notice is that that how I was raised, and then also being married to someone that was. Um, kind of also in a way, but didn't really isn't really a worshiper of God. That they use like this guilt trip concerning that you're supposed to forgive me no matter
Yeah.
what I do to you. Yeah, you're supposed to like just let it go. And that I struggled with that concept and that feeling for a long time until I realized that really forgiveness has to do with ourselves and our inner peace. Um, and I think that was it recently the study of Job and how he had these like fake friends or fake comforters, and they really put him through a lot of like emotional and mental like turmoil and abuse. And it wasn't really concerning forgiving them because he had already gone through a lot of things. It was really being able to forgive and let go so that he could have inner peace. But it didn't mean that they didn't do the things that they did to him. And it didn't mean that if they continued to be that way, that he was going to continue to be their friends and close to them. It just means that sometimes we have to leave it in God's hands, because God always tells us like that he'll take care of it and that vengeance is his, and that we kind of get out of a bad situation, but we could be able to maintain who we are in our peaceful environment without creating too much chaos in our life.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yes, definitely it has to be balanced, and that's what I'm always stressing to the the ones I love, my family, that while we try to be caring and loving and nice and generous, that we have to have our boundaries up so that we don't get taken advantage of, because sadly that's just the world we live in. People prey on the weak. And so, yeah, we have to find our balance. I always like to say, stand for something or fall for anything. So, that's the world we live in.
So true, so true. And it feels like as time goes on, there's so many that kind of just do prey on the weak. And so it's always trying to like do that whole protection and walls up kind of feeling.
Yeah. And you mentioned something interesting, because I want to touch on this real briefly, because I like to just try to help as many as I can who might be listening, who are going through something or thinking about something. But you mentioned about how you were brought up and then how you try to raise your son. And so,
yes,
I'm a firm believer on, we've all gone through things in the past that are, might not be ideal.
Yes.
And then you mentioned generational too. And so what are some of the things you do to try to switch it up from how you were brought up to what you're trying to teach your son?
I was so different with raising my boy, because I really there was no name calling in our house. There's no insults. I always tell him to just be himself and really stop to listen to who he was and what he wanted to be, or what he wanted to do. Like for example, like growing up, anything I wanted to do was never encouraged. It was basically picked for me what they wanted, like what they thought I should be, or where I was going to go in life. And I can't say rebellious, but I kind of did my own thing. But I just remember that like there was no them not really realizing who I was or really getting to know me. They felt like they owned me, that I was just like created for just living what they wanted. But with Joel, I really focused on who he was as a person. And so I would ask him questions like, what do you like and what do you don't like? And so for like, this is just an example, when he was growing up, he really got a knack for playing the violin. And I didn't force it, but I encouraged it. And I let him, and he got a great experience from just playing the violin. Whereas in my family, anything artistic was kind of frowned upon because it doesn't make money and it doesn't, create a lifestyle. But for him, I thought, why not? Like it's something fun, it's something different, and I just let him be who he needed to be, without
Mm-hmm.
trying to make him be who I wanted him to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a different, upbringing. Like
Yeah, and that's huge. Yeah,
yeah, and
because
yeah, and
it's parents out there sometimes struggle with I I don't like when I see or I hear or talk to different people, and they may have been physically abused,
yes,
growing up, and then some have said that that's how they were raised, so that's how they're going to raise their children. And then I know others who say, I went through physical abuse, I know how you feel physically and mentally, I don't want my children to experience that, so they decide that the pattern's going to change with them. And so,
yes,
yeah, that's why I asked you that, because just, for any listeners out there who, may have gone through stuff growing up, you don't have to keep a negative or bad pattern going. Like you have the power to change it yourself.
yeah, so true. And I learned from Joel like quite a bit. Like when I was while I was raising him, I didn't realize that. Like I knew I was changing patterns, but I didn't really understand the impact of it for a very long time, until like he was in middle school and my ex, um I'm from Florida and my ex lives in Florida, but he came here, I think basically to scare me and try to kind of show that he still had some control over us. So he decided that he was going to like take me to court and try to take Joel back with him to Florida, but Joel was already like a preteen. But what I noticed about like his interaction with his father while he was here was that his father used all the same tactics, and all the my I guess my ex's generational trauma comes up in that he also grew up in a family where it was very insulting, and that's how they kind of manipulate, like just by hitting your insulting to hit your low self-esteem or make you
Mm-hmm.
have low self-esteem. And then after that, they try to control and manipulate, because you have low self-esteem, you kind of just go along with it. But he tried that when he was here in a counseling session with my son. Um, and my son's reaction was like, no, like you don't talk to me that way, or you don't call me names. And I thought like, yes, like that was the first time that I was like, I changed that pattern. Like I did that by myself. Like I was like so surprised, and it felt good because I thought
Yeah.
like my kid gets to live a whole different like life. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I see my kid. He's quiet, but he's pretty self-assured. Like he's just kind of like going with the flow, and he doesn't have like the sadness or the trauma or the stuff that I went through. It's very
Mm-hmm.
different for him. And I'm glad, because I feel like I changed a pattern, like that generational trauma that's happened for generations. I got to like flip the switch and make it
Yeah,
totally different.
that's great. And just so you all know that, uh, like that answer, like it was great. Like it went along with what I was asking, but I wasn't expecting that answer, because like this is totally unscripted. So I'm just asking questions as we go. So like that just shows the power of that we have if we take control of ourselves. We have great self-esteem, self-worth, self-love. Like that's the kind of things you can do. You can put an end to negative patterns and promote positive things. And look what it did for you. And Joel, he was able to stand up for himself, at a young age.
So true. And I was so proud of him, because I thought, okay, like this is like I'm okay. Like because as a parent, sometimes you wonder like, am I messing everything up for him? Like am I doing the right thing? Do I know what I'm doing? Another thing I was thinking about is that, like, sometimes when you're growing up with your family, apologizing was not, parents never apologize to kids, according to like how I grew up.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I always was telling Joel things like, like I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Like, if I make a mistake, it wasn't intentional. I just don't know like what I'm doing. This is all new to me. Um,
Hmm.
to let him know that yeah, I'll make mistakes. Like, maybe I didn't understand a certain situation, and maybe I didn't get this or that, but I was just I just love you. I'm trying, and that's
Hmm.
all I could really do. And so I realized that he kind of feels like it made him feel safe with me. Like, he knew that I
Hmm.
tried.
And
And
that's exactly what that does, because like our children, I think and I'm always talking about it with Michelle. I think that's the best way one of the best ways we can teach our children is that to show them that, parents aren't perfect. We make mistakes. Even though I made a mistake, this is what I can do or what we can do to, make it better or change it. Like, they need to know that, because, growing up in this world, they need to realize that they will make mistakes, but it's not the end of the world if they do.
exactly. And I think that there's many, like, I've seen many people that have grown up in households that were abusive. And when they made a small mistake or something little, they really internalize it and make it like they're that's the worst deal, or they're the worst person in the world. And it's not really like that. It's like you're allowed to make mistakes. It's just getting, like, just if you fall, get back up and keep going, and just
Yeah,
keep moving.
exactly. So the thing, I appreciate that. That was a great example of like righting a wrong growing up and stopping something that's been going on for generations in your family. So great example. And so if we fast forward a little bit, you mentioned about how you came up, how you were brought up, the mindset that you had. When was it, do you think, that you kind of said, okay, the way I'm living, it's not really working for me. I'm not happy.
With my ex-husband, or
Well, just in general, at what point in your life did you kind of say, okay, the way I am now is just not working for me?
um I believe that it's been a long process. Like, I believe it started, like, I think right after I left my ex-husband. It's been really years, but I think the last years I've focused on other things that I've realized. But, like, after leaving my ex-husband, I I went into, like, I came to Washington, or here, and I immediately was put in this program for, like, DV, domestic violence,
Hmm.
with counselors. And I really realized then that in the beginning, I just thought like it was just my ex-husband, that was, like, abusive and toxic, and that it was just a one thing. And but I'd never, like, really matched it to my childhood. I just thought
Hmm.
like, oh, this just started now. But then, with going through the counseling, I realized, how it does, your childhood does affect your, like, who you marry, and it affects your self-worth. It affects so many things about you. um so has been a long, like, process and journey. um
Hmm.
but I think more recently, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, um I realized, that I still kind of do that feeling like I need to earn love, instead of allowing people to just love me, or
Hmm.
and I realized, like, okay, like, this, because I realized how hurtful it was, to try to earn someone's love and feel like they didn't value you or care about you, or make you it made me feel worthless. And I thought, but that's, it just felt so painfully hurtful. But, how do I say, I looked around to other people and realized that some of them didn't seem to be going through the things I was going through, or
Hmm.
having those feelings that I was feeling, that were so intense. And how feeling, like, if I didn't earn someone's love, then that made me, like, unworthy of love, or unvaluable. And yeah, so that's when I started thinking like, okay, so this doesn't seem right. And I started like doing a lot of work and went into like really a good counselor. And what I found out and what I noticed was that there's this new thing called like attachment styles and theories, or attachment styles. And I fell under like more of an anxious attachment style, which basically means that people that have that attachment style, it means that usually they grow up with a parent that is like, one moment they love you and they care for your needs and they're there for you, and then if you make them mad or they're upset, or they kind of have like a switch off, and then they abandon you, and they're neglectful and they're insulting and they're hurtful. And so you feel as a child that you have to like run and like earn their love back, and force them to love you, and you'll bend over backwards for them.
Okay.
And so I realized that I've been carrying this thing from my childhood into like my relationships, sometimes with other people, especially like a man. And so I would feel like, and then the interesting part is that usually I would pick or be more like prone to be attracted to like people that were more emotionally unavailable, or more, or avoided things because they also had their own like traumas and things that they were working out for themselves. Or actually they probably weren't working out for themselves, but they probably didn't even know they had it. But it was like I was repeating that same childhood trauma of like, I pull for that attention and then they pull away because they're scared of love, but it's a little bit opposite from my attachment style. And so I realized that was what was caused me a lot of just like hurt and a lot of confusion, because I didn't even know I was doing it from something that happened to me like as a child. It was really interesting.
And that, like, I can attest to that because, yeah, as I mentioned on previous episodes, I was like holding on to a lot of pain even as an adult, but I didn't really, until I got counseling, I didn't really realize that, things that had happened to me as a boy, I was keeping bottled up and it was still affecting my life. So, yeah, that's a great point too, for my listeners, that, sometimes we may have things deep in us, bottled up, that molded us, that we're not even really realizing. And so that affects how we are as adults. But yeah, so you said it affected relationships and how you were. And another thing too that was similar with me is like, I realized that I wanted to change how I was, I would say for sure back in like 2009. And like, this is 2024 and it's like it's been a work in progress from that point, because another thing I always want my listeners to understand too, like, you can't fix yourself overnight. Like, it's going to take time and effort. So I'm at a place I'm at now, but it's been years for me to get to this point of the realizing what the issue was, which I was helped to figure that out, I would say around 2014, 2015, around that time.
Nice.
But, within the last 3 or 4 years is when I've really, really just like really worked to get to the point I'm at now in 2024. So it takes time and it takes effort. This isn't an overnight fix.
No, and sometimes you don't even know what you need to fix. That's where I had a lot of hiccups with, because sometimes I was like, well, what? Like, because you don't realize that other people do things a little different, or they don't feel the same way, or they don't have that anxious attachment style. They might have a more secure style, which is a more balanced. So it's so hard sometimes because you don't really even know what to focus on. And because I accidentally stumbled on attachment styles, I think on Instagram. But before that, I never knew but what that was until I heard someone describe what it was, and I was like, I think I have that. Like that sounds familiar to me. Um, so yeah, and then I got a really good counselor, and I think that helps a lot because they sometimes help you be able to get quicker to where you're wanting to go. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, and you're talking to an expert that, so sometimes it's like they kind of know like step one, do this, step two, do
Mm,
this. So you're like, oh, I know how to do this now.
yeah. Yeah, I'm always urging my listeners to, if if you're open to it, that's a good option to try out as counseling because sometimes we can't do it on our own. And like I went for what I was going for, I went until uh, she started suggesting things that I should do that was again totally against how I was raised. And so,
Yes.
but I was thankful that we got to kind of the root of what was causing me so many issues and so much pain in my life. So that was a good foundation for me to grow on. And then, I felt that we had to go separate ways, but she
Yes.
helped me to figure out at least why I was like acting out the way I was. But
Yeah.
so,
And,
what point did you feel like you were just gonna that you were gonna start loving yourself and counting yourself worthy?
well, it was like within the last, just like you said, like for some reason, the last 3 years, it kind of clicked for me, and things fell into much more place. I mean, over the years, I did go into different counseling, and different things, always trying to find like what was happening with me. But then finally, like the last year, it really had to do with and like I said, like about 3 years, finding that I was attracted to someone who had, how do you say, had more of an avoidant attachment style, or I believe did,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that I was really feeling like I needed to earn that love, and that if I didn't have that validation, that it said so much about myself. And then I realized after that, um, and after going to counseling, that it really had nothing to do with any validation or anything like that. It had to do with how the other person themselves had their own like issues that they had to deal with, that they may not know, but that my validation, my worthiness, had nothing to do with them, but with myself.
Mm-hmm.
How I felt about myself and what I knew about myself, and to trust myself more, because sometimes you don't trust yourself and you feel like someone else has to approve or validate you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that also came from my childhood. Like it was like I couldn't think for myself, or I needed to make sure that it was okay, or they needed to validate how I felt about things, or what I thought, or and I realized that came from way back then. But yeah, I realized that that just some things just don't work out, and it has nothing to do with me, that I wasn't. It was just the situation, or it was just something else, and it had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I internalized a lot of things and took it like it was me, like I'm not worthy, and like I've had a hard life and everything always happens to me,
Yeah.
kind of feeling. Um, and yeah, and you do get like that hurt, like nothing works out, and I'm always like struggling. But then you realize, no, it's not that. It's just life, and things happen,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so it is a much more it's such a much more calmer and happier place.
Yeah. Yep.
And and you get that inner peace, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna be okay. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
bad.
Yeah, and it's definitely more calming when you love yourself first, and that's what I always say. We love and care for ourselves, and things just seem to fall in place. And like I mentioned, I've known you for years. When we met, Joel was just a
I
itty
know.
bitty little fella, and now here he
Yeah.
is, a young man, and I have a beard full of gray hair. But I
Yeah.
can tell. like I can see a difference in you from when I first met you than who you are now.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the way you act, the way you talk, the way you just your outlook on life is totally different, and that's why I felt
Hmm.
I wanted to interview you because yeah, you're like living what the theme of my podcast is about love is your medicine. We have to love ourselves enough first before others can love and respect us. Like that's just how I feel.
That's so true. It is so true. Because I know when Joel was younger, I was like a new single parent. Um, And yeah, and I remember your daughter was just a little baby. She was just
Hmm.
a little baby. She's like a young girl, like young lady now. But yeah, she
Now
was.
she's working on getting her license.
No, oh, that's exciting. I know as a parent, it's like, oh, this is scary, but it is exciting though. I know years go by so fast.
Hmm.
But I do remember that, like, I felt back then that, like, I was just trying to survive, and that's the thing is that when you come out of a childhood of that it's very hostile, and then you're married into a very hostile relationship, like you stay on like survival mode for so long until you're able to heal that, and all you do is you feel like you have to protect yourself and put walls up, and
Oh yeah.
because yeah, you're so afraid that like the next person's going to come in and try to like do something, and so it takes so long.
That sounds like me. Because
Yeah,
that's what I did. I put walls up, and my whole thing in life, because of what had happened to me, was I'm gonna
yeah,
get you before you get me.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if I was. I think was more
Yeah, I don't
like
think
I
you were like that. I was
no.
I was, I was more villainous.
I know. I was like, yeah, I was like, I don't think
Yeah,
I was like that,
that's not in you.
no, I think I was more like I'm just gonna protect myself. And sometimes I would just
Hmm.
put walls up and not allow people in because I was like, I'm so scared of going through bad stuff again that I was like forget it. I'm just gonna like be a single parent, like really focus on Joel, and then that's it. So yeah.
Yeah, that was my defense mechanism. If I felt someone was gonna, and again, I didn't know that's why I was doing it until I was going through counseling,
Yeah.
and eventually she picked up on it. But yeah, I did certain things in my life or had certain reactions because that was my whole philosophy. Before I felt like, if I felt like you were gonna hurt me in some type of way or it was going in that direction,
Yeah.
then I would do it first. And whether that was just like breaking off all contact or saying something real dumb and hurtful, however I did it, that was my defense mechanism.
No,
You know,
yeah, that totally makes sense to me. I totally can see why, because it's scary when you like that's one thing that I've also like in the last several years really worked on is I've studied a little bit about like the nervous system and
mm,
how uh, there are times that we have some traumas that we don't even know we have, and we could be in a perfectly safe environment, but something will trigger us, and then we feel like it's not safe anymore, and so our
yeah,
nervous system goes into red, and we're feeling
mm,
like, well, actually it goes more into yellow because it's like green, yellow, and red, what I was reading about the nervous system.
mm,
And so it'll go into a yellow that we don't feel as safe. And so we start tensing up, like our stress levels are up. And so we may say and do things just because we're trying to protect ourselves. It's like that
oh
protective
yeah,
mechanism.
yeah,
And and so I've been really watching that in myself. There's times that I start feeling like something triggers me and I think like, oh, this is like the person in my past that hurt me, or and then
mm,
I get really triggered, and I've been really working on just watching myself and the other person to see if okay, they might have said something rudely or done something, but does it really matter, or is it like am I
mm,
safe enough that I could just relax and just be myself, and kind of be like, oh, whatever. Um, and that's been a big one for me because I didn't
Yeah.
realize that things triggered me, and because of trauma responses, sometimes you do get triggered.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's
And that, yeah, it still happens with me. Depending on what happens,
me
it
too.
can trigger something inside of me. But like you said, I just have to go think it through and calm myself down. And yeah,
No,
and
yeah, I
like I
still.
do the daily thought I put out, and either that's kind of similar to what I
Yeah.
put out today. A lot of it have to do with, you kind of mentioned, like who we put ourselves around or who we open up to. And
So true.
that's a huge thing. If we allow people in our lives that, we may not know them fully until we really get to know them a little bit more, but if we allow them to stay in our life and they're affecting us in a negative way, it's just going to hurt us or pull us back into cycles that we're trying to better ourselves and move away from.
So true. Yeah, because sometimes, like, I notice with myself that, also growing up in the family, like, everybody gets invited, everybody gets included, but not realizing that not everybody, kind of, what's that saying, that doesn't deserve a place in your table, because
Hmm.
they might bring things that just are not helping you. It may like really hurt you emotionally, mentally. It's not building you up, or it's not
Hmm.
allowing you to progress. There's totally difference that if someone comes, and you know that they're working on themselves and they're trying to better themselves, and that's different because then you can
Yeah.
kind of work with that. Um, but if someone comes and you know that they're just not, fitting very well, or that you're able to say, like, this isn't working for me, and that's a good boundary. Like, if something is just not working and you don't even see the person like try or apologize or anything like that, that's a moment that you just have to be like, well, I wish you well, but I have to
Hmm.
like keep it moving for
Yeah.
me and my kid. um and so yeah, that's totally like a different game changer. That's been a game changer for me.
Hmm. Yeah, and it, like what you just said about having the courage to step away from someone who isn't good in your life. That's a part of self love and self respect. A lot of people, because they're caught in certain cycles, they feel that they're being mean or they don't want to be that type of person. But we're not talking about it being selfish or self love in a selfish way, but self love to respect ourselves enough that we're not going to put ourselves in a position to be hurt. Like, that's a huge part of self love and self respect.
So true. Yeah, and another thing I've in the last kind of year or so have incorporated in myself so that I could like kind of choose between how much what someone does hurts me or doesn't, like, was like really knowing if they're like an acquaintance, a friend,
Hmm.
or more than like family. Um,
Yeah.
because sometimes if you're treating an acquaintance like a friend, but they're really just an acquaintance, and then they do something like that's a little bit hurtful, um,
Hmm.
it might hurt more. But if you kind of know that they're just an acquaintance, they're someone that you see once in a blue moon or once in a while, but you don't have like a close relationship with them, so it's easier that if something hurtful happens, you're like, oh well,
Yep.
this. Yeah, yeah. So you don't like think like, oh no, like they were just an acquaintance. It's okay.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's how I always, feel too. I've always told Michelle there's different levels to, like, who's in our circle. You have people you're cordial to. You have people, like you say, acquaintances. Then you have the real good friends and family. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm real. I've always been picky, I guess, about who I hang around. But now, as an adult and having a family, like I'm very careful because, like, I found out at a young age,
Yeah.
even if they are called family or relatives, that doesn't mean they always have your best interests at heart. I found that out at a young age. So
So
Yeah,
true.
I've always been careful of who I let in my circle.
So true. Yeah, I know that's how I really had to disconnect um from like the one person that raised me, and you always kind of, there's like a stigma that your parents you're supposed to love, and you do, but if they're hurtful, there's no way that you could, like you were saying, sometimes you have to know that with certain relatives and certain people, they are not safe, and you can't
No.
continue a relationship with them because they're not safe. And I got a lot of like pushback um from family because it was like, no, but you have to have this very close relationship with all your family, and they were trying to define for me, once again, like my family, what
Yeah.
what is good for me and what it wasn't. But that
Manipulate.
yes, but that relationship was really destroying me.
Mhm.
And sometimes when it's like a toxic person or a hurtful person, um it's better to, like, you have to let go, because if you don't, it just continues to put you on a like downward spiral, and it's worse for you. It just never, that cycle doesn't end until you put an end to it and you set that boundary and you're like, enough is enough. You
Mhm.
That's one of the things I was like, things are not going to happen to my son the way they happened to me. And and it was hard, and I got a lot of like um opinions and backslash and all kinds of stuff from my family. But now it feels like they finally like see that we're okay. Like
Mhm.
they basically said like everything bad was gonna happen, and the world was gonna come to. It was just like, but then as time went on, they realized that Joel's at peace, I'm at peace. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to like like fight them on it. I'm just like, no, I
Mhm.
understand. I'm like, I understand your opinion, but this is who I am. This is my
Oh
opinion.
yeah, and it's good to stand your ground. That was good that you were able to do that. People have no choice but to respect you as long as you stay solid and stand your ground and stay consistent with what you believe in. They'll either respect you or they'll slither away. It was always my thoughts.
No, yeah, that's the perfect when they're not good and they slither away. You're like, bye,
Hmm.
see you later.
Yep. But yeah, I can. You have really, really changed, and like it makes me happy seeing where you're at now in life and peace that you have. Because, like I said, you could tell. Someone can tell you what they see. Someone that you
Yeah.
trust or are close to, so they're able to tell you what they see looking in. And so, yeah, me being a good friend to you, I can really see a definite positive and great change for you and Joel, and I'm happy for you.
Well,
And
thank
so,
you.
oh yeah, you're welcome. Thinking about everything that we've talked about, and whoever it may be, a single mom, a single father, uh, a young adult growing up, like, what's your final summation? What are your final thoughts? What would you like to say to our listeners about just finding yourself, finding who you are, loving yourself, deeming yourself worthy? What's a final thought that you would like to convey?
Yeah, I would just say do the work. Like really do the work. Either counseling, sometimes a really good counselor. I don't recommend. There's some counselors that are not the best, but like getting a really good counselor, um, really reading books on psychology or things that you're interested in about yourself. Try to really get to know yourself. And then also, if you're in a bad situation, always find your way out. Um, that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the things, because um, you could get stuck in a bad situation and never be able to get out. Um, but I basically say, like, I love the type of like counseling, the EMDR counseling.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the counselings that I actually love, because it desensitizes like trauma. And so it helped so much, and just being able to desensitize a lot of the hurt and the feelings over the past. Um, but yeah, I just would say do the work, like go out there and just really focus on yourself. It's kind of like going out to exercise or eat well. Um, that's like for the physical body, but like for the mental and emotional body, just read up on psychology and bettering yourself, and just set goals for those for yourself in a different
Yeah.
way.
Self-development.
Yes.
Yeah. And I really, really appreciate you being on. Great thoughts. And like I enjoy, talking with you and going over different things about mindset and
Thanks.
like kind of comparing our own journeys about self-development and self-love, self-worth, and everything. I really enjoy it, and
Yeah.
I am greatly appreciative of you being my first interview.
Yeah.
Like I was nervous, you were nervous.
I was trying not to let you know I was nervous. I'm like, I'm good, I got this.
But I think we did great. Like
Yeah.
like I said, I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask you questions, just keep flowing, and because I think that's what makes the best talking points. Because when I do my episodes,
Yeah.
I'm not looking at paper or anything. I'm just talking. So I felt like I wanted to do interviews that same way, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. I hope you did. I hope the listeners did. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be on again in the future.
oh, that would be fun. Yes. No, I totally. At first, I was like, "Yes, let's do that," and then I got a little nervous. I'm like, I could sometimes chatter a lot because, well, my name's Cathy, so chatty Cathy. So I was like, "Don't talk too much." I kept telling myself, "You don't need to talk too much."
No, it was excellent, and you brought out points that I really really think will help. It helped myself to think about certain things you said, and
Good.
like I always say in my episodes, if I only help one person going through something, then I feel like I've accomplished a lot. So no, I appreciate it, and I thank you for being on. To all my listeners, I appreciate you all. I hope that you found value in this episode. Remember that you are worthy enough. We all need to love ourselves. Love is our medicine. It starts with us. If we fix ourselves, develop ourselves, no matter how long it takes, and continue it, good things will happen, and people will respect us, and we'll draw people that bring value to our lives, just like we should be bringing value to other people in our lives. So I appreciate you all. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, go and do great things.